and welcome to So You Think You Can Dev, a KMS debrief on all things digital. Today, I'm super excited to talk to Tory Bjorklund, a digital transformation specialist and CEO of Victoria Fide Consulting. Now, Tory has so much experience in digital transformation. He has been the founder of his own software company, has worked as a CTO, and has led digital transformation projects across very complex supply chain systems. Tory, I am super excited to have you on the podcast today.
I'm excited to be here. Thanks so much, Addie.
Do you want to give us a little bit of background on your experience and what you've seen with digital transformation in your career?
Yeah, sure. Well, I'm really old, and some people are surprised that there was technology back in the 80s, but I did start my consulting business in 1987. I was actually developing and stuff before that, and eventually also started a manufacturing company in the mid 90s. I started a software company in '89. I guess I forgot to mention that, called Simplicity Software. And we built integration products, and some of which got picked up by IBM, and they were selling them into large enterprises. And then co-founded a software company that develops back-end office ERP system, basically, and CRM system for ag companies. And then also been involved in a couple hundred or more ERP implementations and CRM implementations and manufacturing execution systems, warehouse management, things like that. So been around the block quite a bit. I love coding, but I don't do much of it. I'm more so focused on the business side of things and helping companies to utilize technology to meet their business goals.
Awesome. Well, you have a ton of experience, as you said, many, many years working in digital transformation. And what I'd love to understand from you is what's different in 2025, or is it different? Is it still the same kind of process? How are you seeing things today?
Yeah, it's so a lot of things are different, and a lot of things are just the same. I mean, so some of you may have heard of the Standish Group. They've done a chaos report since the late 80s, early 90s, and the one of the things that they do in that chaos report is report on how much failure there is in software development projects and now digital transformation projects. There's other companies that do surveys and studies on failure of anything from ERP implementations to digital transformation initiatives. And those numbers, unfortunately, have not gotten better. And in fact, they've gotten worse. The technology has gotten better. When I started in 1989 doing software development for implementations, there was no such thing as an API. The idea of having APIs and interfaces, for that matter, just didn't exist really, and it wasn't common. So if you were doing integrations, you were doing it at the database level, at the data level, things like that. So that's changed. The architecture has changed significantly. I mean, it was a big deal to have client server technology back in the day, and now there's so many more layers than the client and the server layers. So the architecture is just vastly improved, and then of course the tools are tremendously more effective. I mean, we used to debug from the command line most of the time, and now you can graphically display the flow of your code and find unintended cycles and things like that. So I mean, it's just the tools are so much better, and of course you can't talk about tools without talking about AI. So there's just ways to generate code. And actually, I do code reviews with AI. I do my own code reviews. I've always been a strong proponent of peer-reviewed code. And man, AI does a really good job of code reviews. So, a lot has changed, but unfortunately, the results, things have gotten more sophisticated, but unfortunately, success hasn't gotten any more pronounced.
There's so much to dive into there. And I think your last statement is where I want to go first. So we have better
Sure.
tools. You can leverage AI to do some of these review components. Why are these numbers not getting better? Why do digital transformations still fail at such high rates?
Yeah. And let's add one more piece to that, and that's agile. I mean, we have gotten a lot better executing code and executing the the coding aspect of things. What hasn't gotten any better is the planning, preparation, and the business leader. So, anybody that's been involved in development for very long, one of the biggest complaints is the requirements just keep changing. And that's why we developed agile technology or agile methodologies, right? Was to be able to have support changing requirements. But if requirements continuously change, you can't be successful. How do you measure success? If you can't meet the requirements, because they're constantly changing. So something has to change, and that is basically the vision for technology and the acceptance or the yeah acceptance of the technology is also, people are still change averse, and even though change has been rapidly increasing, and people just have a hard time changing the way they do things. So most of it is really on the people side of it. The technology is improving, people aren't, and then the leadership side of it and the vision for, what are we actually trying to build? What are we trying to accomplish? What are we trying to improve? And how do we measure that?
I think the people problem is so salient. I think especially with a technology audience. A lot of our
Yeah.
listeners here are coming from the tech side. And so my question to you is if you're the technical leader, how do you help to manage up the leadership team, the business vision to better align with what's needed in a digital transformation that's not going to throw you off track and mess up your product release schedule?
Yeah. Well, so first thing I would say is making sure that we have the right vision. Why is this technology thought to actually accomplish what the leadership is hoping for it to accomplish? So why is this the right decision, the right direction? Because if they aren't, they meaning the leadership at the leadership level, they're approving the spend and that sort of a thing. If they aren't convinced that this technology is actually going to do what they are intending for it, they won't stand behind it for very long. It'll constantly change. So that's the first thing, is getting solid commitment that yes, this indeed is the right strategy to accomplish the current business demands. Business demands can change, and that's out of everybody's hands. But the demands from the business don't have to change as long as the business demands don't change, what the environment is demanding from the business. So that's the first thing. The second thing is making sure that you have the right people and building the right team. And coming from the tech side of it, I hate to admit the fact that we often have a little more grandiose view of our abilities than is probably justified. And rather than admit where we need to bring somebody else in that has certain experience in those areas, or upskill ourselves or something like that, we figure we can learn as we go. And that tends to, of course, hit issues with either quality or timeline, or both, most commonly both. And so that's another area. But getting leadership to then invest in, maybe bringing in consultants or other people with certain expertise, yeah, augmenting the current team, those kinds of things. That's the next step from, again, managing up. I want to make sure that we can build the right team to do the job. And then the other thing is that we need to educate people in leadership that even with the tools and everything, it isn't like falling off a log. This stuff is actually quite complex, and more is being asked of products that are being built. And we need to help people understand that it's really quite difficult to do that in an excellent manner with high quality. Even today, it's a lot easier than it used to be, but it's still quite difficult. And we sometimes don't do ourselves very good when we build a clickable prototype in, a week and a half, and they think, geez, you're 80% there, let's get this thing done. And it's like, no, we're, 2% there. And, so we have to do a little more, a better job of educating to manage up, as you say.
And what do you think is really driving that demand for digital transformation? I think it's been a buzzword for a while.
Yeah.
Is it because the products or consumer expectations for software products are increasing? Is it because these older technologies are just no longer sufficient for what companies need, or where are you seeing this trend really come from?
Yeah, that's actually a really hard question to answer and really the right question to be asking. So, for example, um, people didn't start asking McDonald's to allow you to order before you get there and pick it up at the counter. They didn't ask for that. McDonald's realized, and I don't know that they were the first one. I'm just using them as an example because, I walk in there and, for a while you would get frustrated because they were actually having difficulty finding people to work there. And so it was slow. It took a long time to place your order and get your food back. And then they put in place the kiosks, right in the store where you could place your order so you didn't have to stand in line anyway. And then the next step was, well, you can place your order before you even get there and show up, and they've already been working on it. Nobody was asking for that. What they were asking for is, I don't want to wait at the counter. I want this to happen quicker, but I don't want to go through the drive-through either. And so I think that it properly so. This transformation was being driven by a correct understanding of the requirements of what people really needed, but nobody asked for, let me just order on my phone, until somebody thought of ordering on their phone. And as soon as that started happening, then people were like, geez, why can I only do this with Grubhub or whatever? Why can't I do this everywhere? And so that started to drive that technology. And really, let's talk about what digital transformations means to start with. So a lot of people, like you say, it's a big buzzword. A lot of people use it, but basically, if you think about what we're talking about as transformative technology, and so for it to be transformative, it has to actually change the way you're doing business. So transformative technology, that the digital aspect of it is the technology aspect of it. So using digital technology to change the way we do business. We're seeing that at Starbucks and McDonald's and things like that. But we saw that in Netflix, for example, where they went from shipping us DVDs, which itself was transformative, right? I mean, you used to go down to Blockbuster and rent your movies. Now they're shipping it through the mail. Then they started streaming. Huge transformation. Amazon has changed the way we get, I can order stuff out here in, in the sticks in Minnesota and get it the next day without having to pay a premium for that to happen. That was done through digital technology. It transformed our expectations. I never would have thought to ask to get these products overnight. We used to get things overnight. We had to pay a lot of money for that to happen, and it was an emergency, and
Hmm.
nobody wanted to ask for it overnight. Now it's run of the mill to get it the next day. And that was done through digital technology that Amazon has been implementing. So part of it is just we've come to expect it. We didn't think to ask for it, but once it became available in one place, now we expect it to be everywhere. We expect to be able to go online, order a product from, say Walmart, and drive down and pick it up.
Hmm.
And that our expectations came about because somebody else thought about a way to make that happen. A lot of which, by the way, happened through COVID. That drove a lot of transformative technology, right? So we wouldn't have thought of it in some cases. It probably would have eventually, but it drove the need for some of those changes.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's so interesting because one of the phrases that we use is don't be Blockbuster, make sure that you're Netflix. And we've used
Yeah.
that specifically in regards to AI, that
Hmm.
there is this new technology, consumers are starting to get used to it. Maybe you use ChatGPT in addition to, or even instead of Google now. Um,
Hmm.
so I think that's really a salient point that sometimes looking at innovative products is one way to drive digital transformation in your own company that then creates a trend that other companies start to follow when that demand becomes an expectation. And kind of taking that foundation, we've talked about AI as a means to help code review and kind of speed up the process in the back end. What about for the foundation that's needed to support AI as a product or as a new innovation that would go out to market? How should companies think about digital transformation in that respect and the data and the kind of infrastructure that's needed to support new and emerging technology?
Yeah. Well, there's about three things that come to my mind immediately there. First of all, really the only AI that's mature enough for people to really roll out well is generative AI.
Hmm.
And so they need to be thinking about how they can put that into their workflow on a day-to-day basis. I use AI all day long and multiple implementations of it. I just today started for the first time working with Google's Notebook AI, which basically utilizes Gemini, but it allows me to to do a build my own rag in a few minutes and upload some stuff, and then just be able to utilize that in lots of different ways. Really quick to learn and everything. You can use those tools immediately without a lot of concern. Okay, there. But on the other hand, if you want to, I just tried to do something. For example, I volunteer at and I'm on the board of a nonprofit, and we are in the midst of an audit. And in the audit, I wanted to, there was something out of balance, and I wanted to calculate. I uploaded here's 12 months worth of financials, and here's the overall financial individual ones, and that were broken into different areas and whatnot. Anyway, the sum of the parts weren't equaling the total, and
Mm.
something's wrong. Well, I could spend hours and hours and hours to try to get that to figure that out, or I could upload it to AI and ask it to figure it out. The problem was sometimes the total was called, well, some of the reports were called net revenue and some were called net income. It had a trouble comparing those two. So I had to tell it, okay, that means the same thing. And I found myself spending about 2 or 3 hours, which was probably still a time saving, but explaining the data to that. If our data had been clean, followed the same format in every report and things like that, wouldn't have been a problem. So if you actually want to use it in useful ways, particularly in a ongoing use case, your data is going to need to be standardized. It's going to need to be clean. It's going to need to be real. And we know that, but just it's surprising, in fact, how immature, if you will, AI is at times. I told my wife, I feel like I'm talking to the smartest 2-year-old in the world. With it, because I had to explain the fact that sum and total meant the same thing. This one said sum and this one said total, but those kinds of things. So having good solid data that doesn't raise questions, we don't even notice it. We don't even see it when it says net revenue and net income. We don't even see that. Some two different people made reports that were similar, that were supposed to mean the same thing for two different departments. And AI can learn that if you tell it, say, hey, that means the same thing. Oh, okay, let me try it again. But that's, those are some areas that we really have to focus on in order to roll it out in a company in more usable ways than just generating, the next job description or something like that. We need to have really good data, and we need to have agents that are built to do specific things. And then the idea, we really need better orchestrators, if you will, to orchestrate agentic, the multiple agent capabilities of AI. And frankly, from a company perspective, unless you're a large enterprise, you're really not going to do those things. You're going to buy off the shelf software that does that for you.
Mhm.
And then it's going to define the data models, and you're going to have to make sure your data conforms to that, and then it'll work.
Yeah, I think to your point, agentic AI feels like the next frontier of things. I'm sure there will be some very early products out to market that are going to do all of that for you, but at the end of it, at the foundation of everyone's company is their own data. And until you have that in order,
Exactly.
yeah, you can't capitalize on that form of digital transformation.
Yeah,
But
exactly.
I certainly think agentic AI will be leading a lot of digital transformation going forward.
Yeah, and that's an area for those who are in development. To me, that is the frontier. It's here now.
Mhm.
And we need to build better orchestrations, but better capabilities for orchestrating agentic AI. And I mean, building agents is becoming mature. It's hard to say that, with a straight face, because it's just, I mean, it hasn't been around that long, but that's a fairly mature, in AI terms, technology. So the orchestration, though, is a lot more difficult than it needs to be.
And when you say orchestration, do you mean the agent's ability to integrate with your systems, or what are you referring to?
I'm referring to taking a diverse set of agents and orchestrating the exchange of data and information between them in a way that it brings a meaningful outcome. And so being able to do that right now, people are doing that manually. But to me, just think about ETL, for example, or transformation, some form of data transformation in the ETL space. Um, we can do that with drag and drop capabilities. We can do that with orchestrations where you send it to this place and get it summarized and cleaned up, and then it goes into a data warehouse and you pull it from there. I mean, we can orchestrate ETL type work, for example, quite easily with graphical tools. Why can't we do that with agentic, but development? Well, because it's new, you
Mhm.
know. But if you think about what it takes to do that, it's actually quite sophisticated, uh, capabilities. But I think that that's something that we could do relatively easily, is orchestrate the collaboration of multiple agents that are not meant to necessarily uh, work together.
Got it. No, I think it's a fascinating frontier. I'm really excited to see where things move, and even maybe the next couple of months, everything's moving so fast in that regard.
Right. Right. Yeah. And I mean, people are focused on agents right now, and rightfully so, but that's the next step. And if somebody's going to stay in front of it, as developers, that's what we need to be thinking about. How can we build user accessible
Mhm.
orchestrators?
No, I love that. The very, very tangible advice that someone can look at of what is going to have meaningful value in the
Yeah.
immediate future. Well, Tori, we are coming close to the top of the hour. Is there anything that you would like our listeners to take away about digital transformation, something that will make their lives easier, or that they can remember the next time they go into these conversations with leadership?
It's hard to say this from the technical side, but uh, digital transformation should not be driven by IT. And IT should really be saying, and the technical folks should be saying, hey, business, you need to drive this. You need to own it. We're a resource for you. We can advise you. We can help you. but you have to own it because the outcomes need to be business outcomes, not technical outcomes. And so if the business outcomes are what we're looking for, the business side of the business needs to own the digital transformation. And then guess what? When that happens, then those of us that know how to make technology do things, that's when we thrive, right? It's like, hey, I can do that, but we need to have uh, goals that aren't, changing regularly.
Mhm.
It's okay if certain requirements are changing and stuff like that, but the goal, the outcome, that needs to remain the same long enough to hit that.
No, great advice. I think remember the business outcome is the North Star and follow
Exactly.
that.
Yes, absolutely.
Awesome. Well, Tori, thank you so much for your time. I think this was an amazing conversation. I feel like I learned a lot about digital transformation and how to approach it in a successful, measured way. Listeners, thank you so much for joining us today, and I'm excited to hear from you of your thoughts on this episode, and we will be releasing a new episode in 2 weeks.
Great. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.